commies want us dumb, sick, and lost. So we need to take it upon ourselves to do the exact opposite of those things. Let me explain. Let's back it up. There's a book written in 1961. It's called The Rape of the Mind, The Psychology of Thought Control, Menticide, and Brainwashing. Menticide is brainwashing. It's by this guy, Joost Meerloo, some Dutch guy. And it's about thought control in totalitarian states. So how these totalitarian leaders and countries can brainwash people. This guy was a psychiatrist by trade. So I got some quotes here that I think may seem pretty relevant to where we are today. We'll start here. Each wave of terrorizing creates its effects more easily. So when they try to terrorize you, every time they try, it's easier for them to do. After a breathing spell than the one that preceded it, because people are still disturbed by their previous experience. Morality becomes lower and lower, and the psychological effects of each new propaganda campaign become stronger. It reaches a public already softened up. Remember, COVID, well, I was going to say COVID started, but it actually started with, don't worry, come on down to Chinatown. Then it worried, and then it was, well, don't worry about it, just wash your hands. And then it was 2 weeks to flatten the curve, right? That's it, just 2 weeks. And then it was a bit more, and a bit more, and a bit more, and a bit more. And now, we seem to have no problem with people like Schwarzenegger saying, screw your freedom. Sorry, what? screw, huh? Right, but you see, it just goes like this. It gets worse and worse and worse. It comes in waves. And we think for a minute it may be over, right? The torment may be over, right? We can finally take our masks off. You know, in England, they called it Freedom Day. They literally called it Freedom Day, the day that the government allowed people to go back outside. They called it Freedom Day. The day the government decided to give you your freedom back. Let's make it a holiday. We'll call it Freedom Day. And then they come back a week or so later and they come back even harder. And it comes in increasing waves. And each time the people are softened up more. It's easier, actually, every time they come back and take more control. You think it'd be harder, but it's not. It's easier every time they do it. Quote 2. Logic can be met with logic, obviously, but illogic cannot. It confuses those who think straight. The big lie and monotonously repeated nonsense, put your masks on, have more emotional appeal than logic and reason. So while the people are still searching for a reasonable counter-argument to the first lie, the totalitarians can assault them with another. I've always called this the broken synapse effect. So if you're in a group of people and you're debating somebody and this person makes just the most ridiculous comment you've ever heard in your life, it's so stupid, the synapses in your brain can't, don't even, what they said, you don't even know. And because you're stuck, you're like, oh, I don't need, people watching think because you don't have an immediate response back, they think that was a great argument that person made. They made an argument, you have no rebuttal, therefore they won. And you're like, no, that was just the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I don't even know. And it's because logic can be met with logic, but illogic can't. And the totalitarians use it. I got one last quote here. He's talking about Pavlov's dog. So we all know Pavlov's dog, right? So the idea that you have a dog, and then every time you ring a bell, you give it a little food, so its mouth salivates. So eventually you can just ring the bell, and the mouth salivates. Right? You can train the dog that way, Pavlov's dog. Pavlov made another significant discovery. The conditioned reflex could be developed more easily in a quiet laboratory. Every trainer of animals knows this from his own experience. Isolation and the patient repetition of stimuli are required to tame wild animals. The totalitarians have followed this rule. They know that they can condition their political victims most quickly if they're kept in isolation. We've never had isolation in the Western world like we've had during COVID with the lockdowns. One cannot overstate the psychological harm of cooping people up in their house for as long as we did in America and around the world. I was talking to someone from Barcelona the other day, and in Barcelona, his sister's apartment is 400 square feet, right? So you're stuck alone. She's alone, 400 square feet for over a year and a half. The effect that has on people, you can't, right? And then even when we're allowed outside, we're kept in isolation behind our mask. And then we're explicitly told by government officials to not engage in conversation with people. That's fight. Remember the Australian woman, the Australian Fauci said, fight the natural human urge to be friendly. Resist that urge to be friendly to your neighbor, she said. So you're stuck at home. If you're allowed outside, you're not allowed to talk to anybody. That social isolation 100% primes you to be controlled and manipulated. It is way easier to manipulate someone when you're isolated. Okay, so you put these three things together, right? You put the fear, you put the illogic, you put the isolation, you put all these things together, and I'm sure a few more too. Why does it matter? Because this is how it's always done. When you put these things together, people get miserable. People get tired, depressed, dependent on the government like never before. So we're all these things, hopeless perhaps, vulnerable, and maybe not you. Maybe you're like, Slater, I'm not vulnerable. So many, enough people are. Ignorant of our history, that's for sure. Ignorant of who we are. And we are ripe for the ruling elite to completely take us over. Why? Because all those people who are desperate, miserable, they just want it to stop. They just want peace. Okay, what do I got to do to make it stop? What do I have to do to go to a restaurant? What is it? I just want to stop with it already. What do I do? What pill do I have to take? Okay, I'll take it. Fine. That's people's reaction eventually, and that's how the government does it. Last quote from this gentleman. Totalitarianism is a man's escape from the fearful realities of life, the fearful realities that the government's created, into the virtual womb of the leaders. Womb meaning it's safe. Man no longer assume responsibility for their own life. There's peace and silence, the peace of utter submission. People just want peace from the noise and the difficulty and the hopelessness of it all. And people will gladly, not you, but most people will gladly take the government's offer to just finally solve all of our problems for us. I see it already with so many people, like the California Restaurant Association the other day came out and said, okay, yeah, we agree with vaccine passports if it means people can finally eat in restaurants, right? So it's, yeah, I'll do this as long as, please, like I'll submit to this as long as you'll please let me do this, government. That's how it always goes. This is Frank Ferretti. He wrote a book called How Fear Works. He said, relieving people of the burden of freedom in order to make them feel safe is a recurring theme in the history of authoritarianism. Guys, do we have that clip from Fauci? Listen to the way Fauci talks to you. It's unbelievable.
We've got to do mitigation, put aside all of these issues of concern about liberties and personal liberties, and realize we have a common enemy, and that common enemy is the virus. And we really have to all pull together to get on top of this. Otherwise, we're going to continue to suffer as we're seeing right now.
Yeah, we were told the same thing about the war on terror 20 years ago. Put aside these liberty stuff. Just put that aside. Put it aside. Listen, we got to go. We got General Keith Kellogg here. Let me tell you this. We are facing a very deep philosophical problem here. There's no easy solution out of this. But I'll let you know. The government wants you dumb, sick, and lost. The communists want you dumb, sick, and lost. So what do? We get smart. Read books. You get healthy. Lift weights. Go for a walk. Go for a run. Get in shape. Lose weight. They want you sick. So get healthy.
Wow. That was deep and insightful. I want more of that. Like, subscribe, get more.